Hare Krishna, Dandvat Pranam dear devotees. Today, reading from the book Coming Back, The Science of Reincarnation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The first chapter, Reincarnation, Socrates to Salinger. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Does life begin with birth and end with death? Have we lived before? Such questions are normally identified with religion of the East, where the life of man is known to endure not only from the cradle to the grave, but through millions of ages, and acceptance of the idea of rebirth is nearly universal. As Arthur Schopenhauer, the great 19th century German philosopher, once observed, were an atheistic to ask me for a definition of Europe, I should be forced to answer him. It is that part of world which is haunted by incredible delusion that man was created out of nothing and that his present birth is his first entrance into life. Indeed, the dominant ideology of the West, material science, has for several centuries stifled any serious or widespread interest in the pre existence and survival of consciousness beyond the present body. But throughout Western history, there have always been thinkers who have understood and affirmed the immortality of consciousness and transmigration of soul. And a multitude of philosophers, authors, artists, scientists, and politicians have given the idea thoughtful consideration. Ancient Greece. Among the ancient Greece, Socrates, Pythagoras, and Plato may be numbered among those who made reincarnation an integral part of their teaching. At the end of his life, Socrates said, I am confident that there truly is such a thing as living again, and that the living spring from the dead. Pythagoras claimed he could remember his past lives, and Plato presented detailed accounts of reincarnation in his major works. Briefly, he held that the pure soul falls from the plane of absolute reality because of sensual desire and then takes on a physical body. First, the fallen souls take birth in a human form, the highest of which is that of the philosopher who strives for higher knowledge. If his knowledge becomes perfect, the philosopher can return to an eternal existence. But if he becomes hopelessly entangled in the material desire, he descends into the animal species of life. Plato believed that gluttons and drunkards may become asses in future lives, violent and unjust people may take birth as wolves and hawks, and blind followers of social convention may become bees and ants. After some time, the soul again attains the human form and another chance to achieve liberation. Some scholars believe that Plato and other early Greek philosophers derived their knowledge of reincarnation from the mystery religion like Ophanism or from India. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Hints of reincarnation are also common in the history of Judaism and early Christianity. Information about past and future lives is found throughout the Kabbalah, which, according to many Hebraic scholars, represents the hidden wisdom behind the scriptures. In the Johar, one of the principal Kabbalistic texts, it is said, the souls must re enter the absolute substance whence they have emerged. But to accomplish this, they must develop all the perfections, the gem of which is planted in them. And if they have not fulfilled this condition during one life, they must commence another, a third, and so forth, until they have acquired the condition which fits them for reunion with God. According to the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, the Hasidic Jews hold similar beliefs. In the 3rd century AD, the theologian Origen, one of the fathers of the early Christian church and its most accomplished biblical scholar, wrote, by some inclination toward evil, certain souls come into bodies, first of men, then through their association with the irrational passions, after the allotted span of human life, they are changed into beasts from which they sink to the level of planets. From this condition they rise again through the same stages and are restored to their heavenly place. There are many passages in the Bible itself indicating that Christ and his followers were aware of the principle of reincarnation. Once the disciple of Jesus asked him about the Old Testament prophecy that Elias would appear on the earth. In the Gospel of Saint Matthew, we read, "And Jesus answered them, Elias shall truly first come and restore all things. But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not." Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist. In other words, Jesus declared that John the Baptist, who was beheaded by Herod, was a reincarnation of the prophet Elias. In another instance, Jesus and his disciples came across a man blind from birth. The disciples asked Jesus, "Who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Regardless who had sinned," Jesus replied, "here was a chance to show a work of God." He then cured the man. Now, had the man been born blind for a sin of his life, of his own, it must have been a sin done before his birth, that is, in previous life. And this was a suggestion that Jesus did not dispute. The Quran says, "And you were dead, and he brought you back to life. And he shall cause you to die, and shall bring you back to life, and in the end shall gather you unto himself." Among the followers of Islam, the Sufis especially believe that death is no loss, for the immortal soul continually passes through different bodies. Jalaluddin Rumi, a famous Sufi poet, writes, "I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Why should I fear? Why was I less by dying?" The timeless Vedic scriptures of India confirm that the soul, according to its identification with the material nature, takes one of 84 lakh forms, and once embodied in a certain species of life, evolves automatically from lower to higher forms, ultimately attaining a human body. Thus, all the major Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, have definite threads of reincarnation throughout the fabric of their teaching, even though the official custodians of dogma ignore or deny them. The Middle Ages and the Renaissance, under circumstances that to this very day remain shrouded in mystery. The Byzantine Emperor Justinian in 553 AD banned the teachings of pre-existence of the soul from the Roman Catholic Church. During that era, numerous church writings were destroyed, and many scholars now believe that the references to reincarnation were purged from the scriptures. The Gnostic sect, although severely persecuted by the church, did however manage to keep alive the doctrine of reincarnation in the West. During the Renaissance, a new flowering of public interest in reincarnation occurred. One of the prominent figures in the revival was Italy's leading philosopher and poet Giordano Bruno, who was ultimately sentenced to be burned at the stake by the Inquisition because of his teaching about reincarnation. In the final answers to the charges brought against him, Bruno defiantly proclaimed that the soul is not the body, and that it may be one body or in another and pass from body to body. Because of such suppression by the church, the teachings of reincarnation then went deeply underground, surviving in Europe in the secret societies of the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Kabbalists, and others. The Age of Entire Enlightenment. During the Age of Enlightenment, European intellectuals began to free themselves from the constraints of church censorship. The great philosophers Voltaire wrote that the doctrine of reincarnation is neither absurd nor useless, adding, "It is not more surprising to be born twice than once." One may be surprised to know, however, that several of America's founding fathers were fascinated by and ultimately accepted the idea of reincarnation, as interest in the subject made its way across the Atlantic to America. Expressing his firm belief, Benjamin Franklin wrote, "Finding myself to exist in the world, I believe I shall, in some shape or other, always exist." In 1814, former US President John Adams who had been reading books about Hindu religion, wrote another ex-president, the sage of Monteliso, Thomas Jefferson, about the doctrine of reincarnation. After revolting against the Supreme Being, some souls were huddled. Adams wrote, "Down to the religions of total darkness." They were then, the statesman said, released from prison, permitted to ascend to earth and migrate into all sorts of animals, reptiles, birds, beasts and men, and according to their rank and character, and even into vegetables and minerals, there to serve on probation. If they passed without reproach their several graduations, they were permitted to become cows and men. If as men they behaved well, they were restored to their original rank and bliss in heaven. In Europe, Napoleon was fond of telling his generals that in the previous life he was Carlman. John Wolfgang von Goethe, one of the greatest German poets, also believed in reincarnation and may have encountered the idea in his reading in Indian philosophy. Goethe, renowned as a dramatist and scientist as well, once remarked, "I am certain that I have been here as I am now 1,000 times before, and I hope to return 1,000 times." Transcendentalism. Interest in reincarnation in Indian philosophy also ran strong among the American transcendentalists, including Emerson, Whitman, and Thoreau. Emerson wrote, "It is a secret of world that all things subsist and do not die, but only retire a little from sight and afterward return again. Nothing is dead. Men feign themselves dead and endure mock funerals and mournful obituaries, and there they stand looking out of the window, sound and well, in some new and strange disguise." From the Katha Upanishad, one of the many books of ancient Indian philosophy in his library, Emerson quoted, "The soul is not born, it does not die. It was produced from anyone. Unborn, eternal, it is not slain, though the body is slain." Thoreau, the philosopher of Weldon Pond, wrote, "As far as I can remember, I have unconsciously referred to the experiences of previous state of existence." Another sign of Thoreau's deep interest in reincarnation is a manuscript discovered in 1926 entitled "The Transmigration of the Seven Brahmanas." This short work is an English translation of a story about reincarnation from an ancient Sanskrit history. The Transmigration episode follows the lives of seven sages through progressive incarnation as hunters, princes, and animals. And Walt Whitman, in the poem of Song of Myself, writes, "I know I am deathless. We have thus far exhausted trillions of winters and summers. There are trillions ahead and trillions ahead of them." In France, famed author Honore Balzac wrote an entire novel about reincarnation, Seraphita. There, Balzac states, "All human beings go through a previous life. Who knows how many fleshy forms the eye of heaven occupies, before he can be brought to understand the value of that silence and solitude whose starry plains are but the vestibule of spiritual worlds." In David Copperfield, Charles Dickens explored an experience that hints at remembrance from past lives. Deja vu. We all have some experience of a feeling that comes over us occasionally, of what we are saying and doing having been said and done before, in a remote time of our having been surrounded, dim ages ago, by the same faces, objects, and circumstances. And in Russia, the eminent Count Leo Tolstoy wrote, "As we lived through thousands of dreams in our present life, so is our present life only one of many thousands of such lives which we enter from the other, more real life, and then return after death. Our life is but one of the dreams of that more real life, and so it is endlessly until the very last one, the very real life, the life of God." Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.